Hey everybody, welcome to Testimony House. New John Simmons here, Pinecone Studios. In the studio today, Jason Courtney, based out of St. Louis. It says that you grew up in the real estate industry, from short sales to house flipping and even commercial developments. You are a nationally recognized creative finance expert and thought leader. You created New Alpha in 2009 and helped over 1,000 people become homeowners where banks wouldn't help.
Almost 2,000.
Oh, hey, and you wrote a book too.
We did.
Yeah. What's the title of that?
It's called Truly Financially Free, How to Avoid the Rat Race of Real Estate Investing. So
now this is interesting to me because we are called to ministry, Testimony House, in an area of St. Louis where I feel is going to get revitalized and sort of, it's a place that lost vision. People moved away from it.
Hey, big things are happening though. I think you're right. Something big's getting ready to happen in St. Louis. It seems to be happening everywhere. Pastor Joe Dobbins at Twin Rivers is our senior pastor, and he's talking about he feels this move of God that's happening when he's traveling that he hopes to see here in St. Louis also, but he says it's everywhere.
Yeah,
it's absolutely everywhere, and he believes it's prophetic. So
that's cool. Twin Rivers is where you go to church?
It is.
We have a connection through my church, Spirit Church. We were just at your church for Freedom Weekend.
Okay.
A weekend or two ago, in the beginning of May.
Okay.
So good connections there. I want to know where the passion for real estate came from, or is this a passion for you?
It has become a passion.
Yes.
I'm not sure it always was. So I guess I'll explain that. I grew up in construction. My dad was a custom home builder. So I started cleaning up job sites and delivering lumber, things like that. And, that's what I started doing. I wouldn't say that I was in love with it then. But there were parts of it that I was in love with for sure, like taking someone's idea out of their head, putting it on paper and seeing that come to life in a custom home. That I loved.
Wow.
As far as running the business and dealing with, contractors and production part of that, that was never really a part of the company I was super involved in, but I was reliant on them to produce what we drew, right?
Yeah.
And that can be frustrating if it doesn't go perfect, because people who are building a custom home are not picky, but they know what they want, right? If they were easy, they just go buy a tract home and a subdivision. Mm-hmm. So all of our customers are not difficult. They're certainly not difficult. But I really enjoyed that part of it, seeing someone's idea and dream come to reality. But that takes a year per person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed custom home building. I really enjoyed working with my father, which we'll get into later, with the whole testimony stuff, but that was great.
That's cool. So when you build custom homes for people, and you had said almost 2,000 people.
Well, that custom homes was my family business. So as far as people we've helped become homeowners, that's
two different things. Okay.
Two totally different
try and keep
businesses.
it clear then. Okay.
Yeah.
So you were in business with your dad.
Right.
And you started on the construction site, helping out, that kind of stuff.
As a kid, that's what I did. I was hanging out with contractors, which kind of started my story or my downhill spiral before Jesus, right? And so that was my arena, partying, getting high, all that stuff. And my supplier was one of my dad's contractors, right?
So anyway, we hire around here, Dad.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just, that's where I started. I started in construction, custom home building. I built some houses for pastors. So later on, after becoming a Christian, and these pastors were like, "Hey, could you build me a church?" I'm like, "I can build anything. It doesn't matter what it is." So I started building churches, non-for-profits, and then I kind of broke away from custom home building at that point. And then the economy tanked shortly after that, and I got into doing short sales and loan modifications to try to help people save their homes from foreclosure. So when the economy tanked, I realized really quickly the problem was foreclosures, right? So whatever we got to do to stop those would be great, because it's impacting the construction industry, it's impacting custom homes and all homes. So I went on this freedom fighting mission, and the problem was so big. I mean, we couldn't make a dent in it. It was just, it happened all over the country. But I learned a lot during that time, and I learned that the banks always win, right? And so I learned it would be good to be the bank. And these people that we were helping avoid foreclosure now had some of them had to do a short sale, their credit was trashed, and they couldn't go buy another house. So I thought to myself, well, why don't I start buying some of these houses and make them available to them on owner financing until they can rebuild their credit or whatever, and then they can buy it again, Not the same house, because that would be what's called an arm's length transaction, and the banks don't like that. But I would buy these houses from the banks, renovate them, and I would find people who maybe I worked with or hadn't worked with that didn't qualify for traditional mortgage, and then I would just owner finance them, and they would just piggyback off of my loan. And once they rebuilt their credit, they just refinanced me out, and they owned a home again. So
that's an incredible. So to go from like working as a little kid on the field to basically doing everything within the industry, it sounds like, or at least most of it. And then to turn yourself into a bank.
Yeah.
Most people wouldn't consider that an option.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever thought about it. I certainly wasn't taught those things. It was something I learned dealing with banks. When you're doing a short sale, you're negotiating with the bank because they're getting ready to foreclose. And short sale, you're basically asking the bank to sell the house for less than what's owed on the house, sell it short, right? Mm-hmm. And so learning how the banks do not want to own real estate, they're in the lending business, and they're in the lending business because they don't want to fix toilets, roofs. They don't want to be in the real estate business, right? So they'll do anything to get rid of these assets and not have to own them and take care of them and so on. And so we were able to leverage that to our advantage to help people, and that's what we did. And so when I saw that, how rewarding that was, everybody was winning. And it just was a very, I felt like I had found where I fit in real estate. Yeah. And I just really just been growing ever since.
Yeah, it sounds like God really blessed this part of your life in the season and to serve people. That's what the kingdom's all about, serving other people.
That's right.
You're doing that in a very maybe non-traditional way, at least in the ways I walk. Not a lot of people are acting like banks and helping people get houses. Sure. We're out here at the food shelters and doing different types of things and doing life groups and things like that. So you're just doing it on a different type of scale, which I'm really commended by. I just really love seeing godly people do big things, and I think that the vision you have for this industry is very big. Yeah. Very thankful for it. But let's go back to, you said that like sort of some bad things happened before you got to this point in life. Like you had to sort of walk through it. So
bad choices.
Bad choices. So what bad choices did you get introduced to?
Well, I think a lot of it was my dad was an alcoholic, and he dealt with his problems by going out and getting drunk. So what do you think I did when I started having problems?
Yeah.
As a young guy, I remember, my dad having a liquor cabinet, and he was always going there. Now, I didn't really know my dad had problems, but I certainly knew that when he came home drunk, he created lots of problems, So I really felt like maybe I didn't learn coping skills very well. So I used, I don't really know. To be perfectly frank, I just know that I wanted to party my life away, and I did just that. So I think I started I started smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol that we stole from either my parents or one of my friends.
In like high school?
Oh no, like even I think I was 11 or 12.
Earlier than that, yeah. It's like high school and middle school mentality to like sneak into mom and dad's liquor cabinet a little bit.
I know. Yeah, and you know what? I'm blown away.
I did some of it too. I started smoking at 15, so I get it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I'm noticing in younger people's homes, like in their mid to late 20s, early 30s, it's like cool to have a cart with a bunch of booze on it.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, when I was a kid, at least it was in a liquor cabinet high, and it's like a trend, So I go to these young people's homes and I'm seeing these carts with, bourbon and whiskey and all this stuff on it. I'm thinking, if you only knew,
right,
what that... we actually had that conversation with Matt and Tim this morning on how alcohol destroys families worse than any other drug on the planet, and it's legal, right? And so we were talking about what the Bible has to say about that and so on. I'm anti-alcohol because I've experienced the negative impacts of that in a drastic way, by the way, and we'll get into that later, how I wound up in prison and all that stuff. So, but ultimately, my thought behind alcohol and drugs is you shouldn't do it. You know what I mean? Even though you can't support it with scripture that drinking is a sin, drunkenness is easy to support, right? Yes. But if someone wants to have a beer or a glass of wine, you're not going to defend that that's sin.
Jesus had wine.
That's right. Yeah. So for me, I'm saying don't even bother with it. Don't. Yeah. What good does it do? And in fact, I put a post out on Facebook probably maybe 4 years ago. I said, listen, I can make a list of 100 bad things about drinking alcohol because someone shared a few good things with me on my Facebook. Crickets. One guy said, well, it helps me talk to other people, you know, and I'm like, well, I do that too, but I drink Dr. Pepper, you know, so that was the best I could get.
Yeah.
And so I thought about this for a long period of time, and I'm saying, you know, drinking alcohol is a learned behavior. Because the first time you drink a beer, you don't say, ooh, that's delicious.
It's disgusting.
It's nasty. And whiskey? I mean, you might as well drink gasoline.
Really?
You know?
Yeah.
But we force it down because we want to be cool, right?
Your friends do it.
Your friends are doing it. And so the peer pressure behind it is really why people do it. And that when I see people drink, I look at them, I don't want to judge them, but I see them as weak to some degree because that was me. I was weak. I was trying to fit in. I know what I'm seeing. Now, I had a problem with alcohol, and I have friends that have a beer, and it's the only beer they have all night. I mean, I'm looking for, when I was drinking, I was trying to finish that a whole case.
Yeah, how long did it take for you to get to that point where, so you start drinking 11, 12, 13, whatever it was?
Well, I was getting drunk pretty quick at that age, but by the time I was 16, I probably would drink a 12-pack. But I like to get drunk quickly because I only drank to get drunk. I didn't drink because I liked it, you know, and so I went to whiskey right away. Jack and Coke was my thing.
Oh, wow.
And then I got into, you know,
Man's drink.
so I guess it turned me into a mean person after that, you know. But anyway, I don't want to glorify any of that stuff.
Sure,
But it destroyed my life.
Yeah.
You know? But in that process, I started selling drugs. And this is where I got in all kinds of trouble.
Like what?
So I was trying to fit in always, you know, wanted to be liked. And so I was the dope man. Everybody likes the dope man, you know. And so I was, you know, and I'm a little bit of an entrepreneur, which is not good if you're selling drugs because it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you get caught. You're going to get caught. Yeah. So that's what happened. I got caught. I was selling drugs. And I ended up going to prison. I got sentenced for 50 years in the Missouri State Department of Corrections.
For what charge?
Lots of charges.
Lots of charges.
Burglary, first-degree assault, 2 counts of kidnapping, 3 counts of armed criminal action, and there was another one. I can't remember what the other one is. This all happened in 3 hours, by the way.
Wow. Well, this is a story that has to be told, I'm sure.
Are you allowed to tell briefly run into it? Yeah. Just because I want to really talk about what God's done in my life afterwards. But ultimately, what happened was I was selling drugs, and one of my runners ran off with 10 grand worth of pot. And when you're moving that amount of product, it all works on a front. So I would get the marijuana given to me by my dealer. My job was to go out and sell it and pay my dealer. Everyone works that way on that level. So one of my runners, because I had 3, I had one in South County, one in West County, and one in the city that was distributing the stuff that I was moving. So this guy developed a cocaine habit, I found out later, and he spent the money that he owed me.
Uh-oh.
Well, guess what happens when he owes me, I owe him, he owes him. It's just a snowball. So now we got to find the money somehow. So I went looking for this guy because he was dodging me, and I found his roommate. And I said, you're coming with me, and you're going to help me find this guy, or I'm going to kill you, you know? Because I don't know who I thought I was. Dirty Harry or something. I don't know. Some tough guy. I was not tough, but I acted like I was. So we're driving around with this guy, and then we find another guy that we knew him. We told him the same thing. 2 counts of kidnapping right there. We take someone against their will. It doesn't matter. Like kidnapping sounds like, oh, you snatched some little kid out of...
Put them in the trunk, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what their age is, right? It matters that you took them against their will. So in both cases, these guys, I'm sure, did not want to go with me. And they thought we had guns, even though we didn't. Apparently, one of the guys that was with me put a beer bottle in their, like, against their side and said, you don't tell us where this guy is, we're going to kill you. So according to, in the court of law, it doesn't matter if you had a gun, but if they thought you did, it's still considered armed criminal action.
Okay.
So there were 3 counts of that. I don't know where the other 2 came from because I wasn't part of any of those actions that happened. My friends who were helping me try to find this guy committed most of these crimes, but I was convicted as the ringleader, so I went down for all of them. Didn't matter. My attorney's like, listen, we can get you out of this if you lie, you know? And I'm like, you know, oh, I got to back up. So I get arrested. This was an unbelievable arrest. So I'm pulling up in my car. The guy finally calls and says, "Listen, man, I'm sorry. I got your money. Meet me here." It was a total setup. He was scared, went to the cops, told them everything. And so they set up this big sting to get me. And so, and here I am thinking, I'm just this kid living in my parents' basement,
You're breaking
selling
bad.
marijuana.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the delusion I lived in, you know, like this is not how the really real world works, you know. Who do I think I am? Al Capone? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what was going on in my head.
Yeah.
So I pull up in this parking lot off of Manchester. Used to be, it was Ashley Furniture now. I don't know what it is, or then, I don't know what it is now. But I pull up in my little Buick Regal, and I see Darren was the guy's name walking across the parking lot, and he takes off his ball cap, which I read in the police report was the signal. That's him. He's the guy. If you take off your ball cap. So he takes off his ball cap, and I see this SWAT team jump up out on the roof of this building. I see these vans go flying out in front of me. These guys coming out with machine guns, like lining up. And I'm thinking, this can't be for me. Like, this is unbelievably little old me, you know?
Right,
I'm
right,
just kind of
right.
watching, seeing what's going on. And I'm like, what is happening? This is crazy. And then I hear a van skid out behind me, and I look in my rearview mirror, and I'm covered with red laser dots from head to toe. I've never been more scared in my life.
No kidding.
So my hands went up so quick, they almost went out the roof of the car, you know? And so I'm like, what's going on? And they pulled me out, you know, beat me up, did all this stuff, took me to jail. So anyway, I'm in jail. I get out on bond, and my attorney says, listen, you better get your act together because we're going to court at some point, and the judge is going to throw away the key on you if you don't get your life in order because you're a drug addict. You're a mess. And I thought I was just some kid that liked to party and skip school. I didn't think I was all that bad because that's the arena I lived in, you know? Of course, all the good kids were like, oh, yeah, he's bad. Yeah. You know? But I didn't
Don't go to Jason's house. He's got all the...
Right. I mean, I had people show up at my house with machine guns. At that time, you think I would have said, whoa, this is getting out of hand. Didn't bother me a bit. I'm telling you, I was living in a delusional state that I don't know if I can totally explain, but I can tell you I have a lot of compassion for people that get in lots of trouble like I did, because I felt like I was blindsided by it, even though I was making those choices. Almost demonic. I hate to use those words because I know it freaks some people out, but I was worse than delusional. I'm not sure what better word I could use. So anyway, I turned myself into a treatment center. Actually, I didn't do that the very next day. I got out on bond. My dad leveraged everything he had to get me out, which was wonderful. At the time, I was like, yes, the least he could do. But what a wonderful man my father turned out to be, which we'll talk about later. Leveraged everything he owned, gets me out on bond, and my attorney says, oh, you need to get your act together. I'm like, okay, whatever, I'll try. Went to an AA meeting or something like that a couple times. And then I had a daughter with a girl I didn't really like. And I held her in my hands, and I remember thinking, this kid is screwed. Like, I'm a mess, or mom's a mess. What am I going to do? So at that point, this kid changed my life. I mean, I saw your kids today, so I know, you know what I mean. But when I held that little kid, and I knew that she needed a healthy parent, and I didn't know where that was going to come from. I thought I was going to have to give it my best shot. So I literally went out, partied that night, turned myself into a treatment center the very next morning. And I haven't used since. Wow. So my oldest daughter, who's 30, going to be 31 in August, my sobriety date lives with her, if that makes sense, which is pretty cool. I mean, I think it's cool.
Hey, everybody. We're going to get back to our video in just a moment. I want to invite you to partner with Testimony House. We are a nonprofit ministry based in St. Louis, Missouri. As you can see, we make Christian videos, but that's not all we do. Last year, we made our first movie, and we have another one in progress right now. We also have books, small group courses, and in-person and online meetings to help people in 4 areas of their walk with God. Those areas are evangelism. We teach people that Jesus saves. Discipleship. We teach people that Jesus changes lives. Family. We teach people that God watches over his children. And addiction. We teach that God can deliver you out of any trouble. Testimony House is a Christian learning center with a desire to help people find Jesus and write God's sentence for their life. If these videos have been a blessing to you, we encourage you to become a partner. You can do that by clicking the give link at testimonyhouse.org. One-time giving is also available. While there, you can also learn more about our ministry and hear the vision and plans for some of our upcoming projects. We pray you would consider becoming a partner with Testimony House. We also want to thank you for listening or watching to today's video.
So now I'm in a treatment center, and I'm trying to get my life together so that I can raise this kid, but I'd committed all these crimes. I'm facing 5 life sentences, right? Yeah. So I'm like, okay, that's pretty stressful.
Yeah, no kidding.
I need some drugs, but can't do drugs. So now I have to learn how to cope with stuff, right? And I realized, I didn't know at the time, but I had no coping skills. Like if something bad happened to me, a girl broke up with me, or something didn't go my way, I would just drink or get high and forget about it.
Yeah.
Well, that works temporarily, but the problems don't go away. They're still in your face. And I just didn't know how to cope with basic life things without drinking. And my dad did the same thing, so I thought it was normal, I suppose. I kind of knew it wasn't because my mom was not that way.
Right.
But I think I just looked up to my dad, wanted to be like my dad, the good parts of my dad maybe. So I forgot where I was.
You're in a treatment center, yes. And
okay.
You want to get high because you can't cope.
I can't cope.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm locked up, kind of. You know, it's an outpatient treatment center, so I could leave whenever I wanted. But I thought to myself, 5 life sentences? I better get my act together no matter what it takes. So I get out of this 30-day treatment center, and I'm like, man, I'm going to use today.
Yeah.
And so I thought I better get into a longer-term treatment center. I'm in really big trouble. So the first 30 days, the smoke's clearing, and you're kind of like, do I want to get sober or not? And I think I had hit the point where I was like, maybe I do. Let's see. Turn myself into a 6-month treatment center. And during that time, I learned how to live life on life's terms through AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and a 12-step program. So working this 12-step program, I started to see some things change in my life, and I was like, oh, changing for the positive. That doesn't happen to me too often. So I like this, and it was little things. But I thought, okay, so maybe this AA stuff is all right. So I went all in and started working a program, got a sponsor, and so on. I knew that there was a higher power of some sort. Oh, I got to tell my turtle story. Can I tell that?
Of course.
So as a little kid, this is where I think God, people might laugh at this, but to me, it's extremely sentimental and important. I was probably 7, 8 years old, and I grew up in the city of Fenton. When I was young, it was, my neighbor had cattle, right? So it was like a small town. Now it's a big deal. But Fenton turtle races. So there's turtle races in Fenton every single year.
Like actual races. I've never been to a turtle race, so I'm trying to...
Oh, here's how the turtle race works. They draw a big circle, and they put a bucket in the middle, and all the turtles are under the bucket. And they lift up the bucket. Whoever gets to the outside of the circle first wins.
Okay. This is not... Isn't
that crazy? You should do it with your kids. They'll love it. Okay. So anyway, I'm looking for a turtle all year. I can't find a stinking turtle, and I'm just getting so frustrated. And I said, God, if you're real, there's going to be a turtle on the top of that hill when I get over that hill. Sure enough, there was a turtle on top of that hill. Now, I didn't serve God at the moment, but I knew he was real, or at least I thought it was possible that he was real. And here's the main thing. He showed himself real to me that day. I just didn't know it. Right. He cares about this little turtle. He cared about me knowing he was real, right? So I only share that for people who think that the small things that God does in their life are insignificant. This was insignificant at the time, but it means so much to me now because he's done it so much more now.
Yeah.
And I realized even as a young kid, when I was scared and, making bad choices, he still cared for me. And all I had to do was call on him. I just didn't.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of my relationship. Even though I sucked at it, he was great, right?
Yeah.
But
it's good.
It might take me a minute to compose.
It's all good. Yeah, so I can say that I totally understand what you're going through. I went through addiction for, I don't know if Matt told you this or not, but because you work with my brother-in-law, for those who don't know.
Yeah.
I went through addiction 12 years. broken gambling addict, and as you're telling your story, I'm seeing myself so much in it.
Wow.
Because
there's so many of us.
So many of us.
And
regardless of the addiction, like what it is, you were talking about how you didn't think you were the guy who had the problem, even though the SWAT team showed up at your house, you know, and I was the guy.
Well, it was a parking lot, but same thing. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I'm the guy who was filing bankruptcy and like sleeping on couches and I didn't have my own place to live. Like, and at no point did it dawn on me that like I was, I was the guy that no one wanted to like be like or whatever.
Sure.
Because in my head, I was like, I don't really have a problem. Like, there aren't like alarm bells in your head that are telling you you have a problem, you need to get it fixed. You're like, nah, this is life. This is just what life looks like.
It's a delusion.
It's delusional.
And the enemy keeps you stupid about yourself.
Yeah.
And like all my friends, I'm like, why in the world didn't you say something? They're like, Jason, you wouldn't have listened.
Yeah.
And we all knew you were going to prison. I'm like, really? That would have been nice to know.
Yeah.
You know, but
so what happened with prison?
So I go to court. I'm working this program now. I'm starting to see these things come to fruition in my life, like good things. And there's this part of AA called How It Works. And in the first paragraph of How It Works, it uses the word honesty, like I think 5 times. And so I said to myself, my whole life's a lie. You know, I am done lying, which is not good if your attorney says I can get you off if you lie. So I'm sitting there. My dad, has hawked everything he owns just to get me out of county jail.
And there's a gambler. That's a fun time.
Yeah, all right. And so my dad's sitting there. My attorney says, you know, we can get you off if you lie. It's your word against theirs. They're drug addicts. At least you're getting your life together. And I told my attorney, I'm not lying. I did these things. I'm going to own it. And whatever happens, happens.
Wow.
My dad flips out.
Really?
My sister flips out. You're lying.
Yeah.
You've been lying your whole life. What's one more time to save you from going to prison?
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
It made perfect sense. But I said to myself, I just can't lie anymore. So from that moment on, I just decided I was telling the truth about everything, and whatever happened, happened. Now, the crimes that I was convicted of, I was the reason those crimes were committed. I didn't physically commit them because it was people, my friends, that were doing these things. I never snatched anyone up. I never put a gun to anyone's head. Never did any of those things. But it was all done because this guy ripped me off. These guys were my friends, who I thought were my friends, right? They were my friends while I was selling drugs. Not so much my friends afterwards. But so anyway, I go to court. I told my attorney, you just get me the best deal you can get, because if the judge asks me if I did these things, you're going to hear me say yes, because I'm no longer lying. I don't care what it costs me. And then she says, okay, well, here's the deal. The minimum sentences that you're facing 5 life sentences. On those 5, the least you can get is 10 years. Are you prepared to serve 10 years in prison? I was like, nope. I'm thinking about lying now, you know? And then she said, well, you go up for parole in 3. And I thought, well, Mike Tyson just went to prison for 3 years and he got out pretty quick. Didn't seem like he was hardly in at all. So I could probably do that. So I don't know why that came into my head, but I was thinking, okay, I can do 3 years.
Get a face tattoo.
What's that?
Get a face tattoo like Tyson.
Yeah, right. Come out a Muslim. So anyway, I just said to myself, whatever happens, happens. Get me the best deal you can get. And she says, Jason, 10 year, you're going to get a 10-year sentence if I do my job well. And so I was like, okay, I'll be good while I'm in there. I'll go out for parole in 3 years and I'll get out. So I thought I was getting a 3-year sentence, or I was going to be in prison for 3 years. So I go to court. I've been sober now for a little over a year. I was out on bond for almost 2 years. And so things were going great in my life. I was, working full time for my father's business and was doing wonderfully there. It's like my dad saying, man, right when you get your life together, you got to go off to prison. You know what I mean? So it was hard for him. But
you wouldn't have got it together if you hadn't had the threat of like this whole
no way.
Like you were already going downhill.
I'd have been dead.
Yeah. This moment causes the prodigal son, to come home. So
that's fact. That's fact. So so I'm sitting here in court and I'm listening to the judge, and it's 10 years, 10 years, 10 years, 3 years, 5 years. I'm doing the math, 50 years. I'm ready to kill my attorney because I thought she said I was only going to do 10 years.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it meant to run all the sentences together concurrent so that you only serve one. So I'm doing this math. I'm thinking, man, I just got sentenced to 50 years. Like I'm not getting out of here. I probably want to go up for parole for 20.
Yeah.
You know, and I was 20 years old at the time, and I was sitting here saying, I'm going to be 40 years old before I even get a chance to get out. And so I didn't hear anything else after that. Everything went black. I'm just thinking, I just got sold up the river by my attorney. And then they cuffed me, take my shoes and everything, take me in the back. And I called my attorney over. I said, what in the world just happened?
Yeah, I imagine.
She's like, Jason, they're all run together. The highest sentence you got was 10 years. You're going to be serving a 10-year sentence, and all the other ones will be served at the same time. So I was like, oh, okay, it really is a 10-year sentence. Yeah. I'm doing 3. I already committed to that in my brain, so I'm good. So anyway, this was another significant moment. The very first time my dad ever told me he loved me was then, when I was being hauled off to prison, you know? And I'm like, these are kind of things that kids need to hear a lot. I overtell my kids now, so much so to where they don't.
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
My dad died when I was 12 years old.
Oh,
and the last thing I said to him was, don't forget to take the dog out. And it's like, it's just this thing is always on my mind. Like, not like a daily thing, but like I think about it, like when I leave the house, kids, I love you. Like you don't know when your last moment's going to be, and I don't want the last thing, and I don't want them to feel like they grow up and be like, my dad never said he loved me. Like you're going to know. You're going to know. You're going to know it.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, growing up, I did not have a good relationship with my father. He was physically abusive, beat me up like I was a man, and talk about a trip, right? Like this person you're supposed to look up to is beating you up. And so I don't want to talk too bad about my dad, only because he had the worst, just same problem I had. So I'm worse than he was, right? So I don't want to be too hard on him, because my dad and I ended up having the best relationship we could possibly have for the last 20 years of his life. My last words to my dad were, I love you, and his last words to me were, I love you too.
Wow, that's beautiful.
So I feel your pain of not being able to say that to your father, but I am so grateful that I did. And this is a man I hated more than anything, right? I remember being in prison talking to one of my counselors about my dad, and he says, well, what was your dad's dad like? And I said, I don't know. My dad's dad died when he was 12, right? Oh, interesting, huh? Mm-hmm. And he says, so what makes you think your dad knew how to be a dad? And I was like, oh, what am I supposed to do with that truth?
Right.
You know what I mean? And so all of a sudden I developed some compassion for my father that I had never had before, because I blamed him for my whole life, even though it wasn't his fault.
Sure.
And that's, I think, when I started to say, you know what? My dad did his best. My dad worked his butt off. He taught me everything I know about business. He sacrificed everything he had ever earned just to get me out of county jail for a little bit.
Yeah, just for a little bit.
Just for a little bit. And I'm like, my dad loved me the best he knew how. I didn't see it. I don't know if I felt it. I definitely didn't feel it, because I'm not sure he was good at showing it. But he loved me the best he knew how. But here's the great part of the story. After I got out of prison, right, my dad sees this life changing me, because I accepted Christ in prison.
Okay.
Really got to get to that, though.
We will, yeah.
So I want to get to my dad thing later. Let's keep going with the prison thing. So I'm in prison, working a 12-step program. I actually ran a...
Hold on, can I ask you,
Sure.
How scary was prison? Like their first day, man. Like I don't know a lot of people who've been, so I want to know you're like I committed to 3 years. It's so easy. I think going to 1 day of prison and being like the worst day of my life. So.
Well, the good thing for me is that I was in medium and minimum security prisons, so I wasn't in with like lifers, which is the horror stories that you hear, right? Guys that are never getting out or have long sentences, right? So, but I can tell you this: you're treated like you no longer have a name. You get a number. I was 514366. It's a number I'll never forget, right? You're treated like an animal. I was stripped butt naked. I had to hold my hands up. They sprayed me down with things and then hosed me down just to make sure I didn't have lice or anything else, right? That would, I mean, it was horrific. I don't know if they do that stuff still.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been, almost 30 years. So I don't know how prisons are run now, but it was rough. But I can tell you, the moment the gate shut behind me and I knew I wasn't getting out for 3 years, there was a bit of a gasp.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, this is really happening.
Like, this is not a dream. Yeah.
The good thing for me is I was sober for a year and a half, I think, at this time, or right at a year maybe. So I had learned some coping skills. So when the gasp happened, I knew that I could just take a breath. I could pray the Serenity Prayer, which, you know, was a lifesaver for me. And I could trust in this God of my understanding, which had nothing to do with the Christian God, because I hated Christians.
Yeah.
And a brief story about that, when my brother and I were young, we went to church. My mom would drag us to church. Dad never went to church. And the deacons were mean to us at the church. You know, they were pulling our hair and yanking on us all the time. So, and I found out later it's because my mom and dad didn't discipline us very well. So when I got out of prison, I went back to that church and I confronted some of those deacons. And they were like, Jason, you guys were tearing this place up. Oh, yeah. We were just trying to keep you from ripping the curtains off the wall and stuff like that. And I felt like, oh man, these men that I hated Jesus and Christianity because of these men. So, and I think that's important for your audience to know. If you're a man of God and you say it out loud, you better act like it.
Yeah. Because
people like me are going to hold you accountable for the king of the world, who's the only one that can save them. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was the problem, not the deacons.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. So you're in there, you're saying the Serenity Prayer. Can I put a pin in there? Because when I was going through because you said you had a positive relationship with the Serenity Prayer.
Oh yeah.
I have the opposite.
I can't wait to hear this.
So I'm curious. So when I walked through, I went to my treatment center and I did 90 days clean. And the whole reason I went there is because I was like, I was almost 30 years old. And I was like, this isn't the life I was meant to have. Like, I had dreams and ambitions and all this stuff. And now I'm sleeping on my buddy's couch and I'm 30 years old. I'm not married. I have no kid. Like, my life is worthless. And maybe the problem's me, right? And so I decided to go into the treatment center for the first time. Now, I'd gone many times before. Girlfriend makes you, mom makes you. I need some money if you go to this, I'll pay your whatever you owe, and get you out of trouble. Treatment centers is what I call them.
Yeah. Okay.
So I went to 90 days treatment center on my own for the first time, and they're teaching me the Serenity Prayer. And the whole time I'm there, 90 days, I haven't gambled. Great. But it's consumed my thoughts. Every thought in my head is gamble, 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 gamble. And so I'm trying to shut it up. So I'm smoking 1 million cigarettes. I'm eating as much McDonald's as I can go buy. I'm sleeping as much as I can, taking pills to just be asleep, because it's the only time I ever had peace in my addiction.
Sure.
Is sleeping. And so they're teaching the Serenity Prayer. And at the end, they kept giving me the pin, 30 day clean, 60. Here you go, John. Here's the pin. And I'm like, this is amazing. It's the first time I felt honor as an adult. Because in addiction, no one treats you with honor.
Sure.
Because they're like, come on, loser, why don't you just stop? Why you keep losing all your money? I'm tired of loaning you. You hear all this stuff. And it's probably, you can translate between addictions. But feeling that honor was so important to me, because it kept driving me to the next 30 days. And I get to 90 days, and he goes, we're not going to celebrate again until 1 year sober. And I was like, really? No. I was like, I need to, how about 4 months clean? He's like, no, that's not how this works. And so that's when I finally bring up the idea that I hadn't been able to silence my desire to gamble. And I said to my counselor, I came to rehab, you're supposed to fix me. I don't feel fixed, I just feel like I'm not doing it. And he was like, well, you gotta learn how to live one day at a time, 15 minutes at a time. And then he says, I just need you to repeat the Serenity Prayer. Repeat the Serenity Prayer. And I was like, I've been doing this, bro. This ain't working. This Serenity Prayer sucks. Get this out of my life. And so I left that counseling center. I went on a huge bender, sold everything in my apartment that wasn't sold down. And then after my last bet, then I finally cried out to Jesus. And I was like, God, if you're real, I need you to show me a future and a hope for my life, because I don't have one anymore. That's when I heard Jesus come into my mind for the first time and said, the kingdom of heaven is upon you. That's when I realized God was real. And that's when I never get, that put me on the track to where I am today. But that Serenity Prayer, I hated it. The idea of it, somehow that did it. I was like, I've done your steps. I've done the things you've told me to do. It didn't work for me in the way it maybe worked for you. You're the first person of all the people I've talked to about addiction who said the Serenity Prayer
saved my life.
Yeah. Hey, tell me why.
Well, I think it might be because my personality, I'm a bit of a control freak. And to have to give up control, right? The Serenity Prayer is, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage, which I didn't have much of, to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference between the two. Yeah. And so I had to give up control. I think I was always trying to protect myself in ways that were unhealthy. And when I found out that there's some things I just can't do anything about, and thinking about them, stressing about them does me no good whatsoever. I liked that feeling, right? It was a release for me. And so maybe it's because of my personality that it helped me so much, but it was crucial. I still use it today.
Well, it helps a lot of people. I am not advocating against the Serenity Prayer. I'm just saying that, like, in that season of my life, it wasn't working. So
well, the 12 steps really worked for me, and maybe this is also has to do with upbringing, right? Like, you may have had coping skills. You were just addicted to gambling. Yeah. I was addicted to drugs and alcohol and had no coping skills.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the way that you described both the Serenity Prayer and how you saw the words on the page, honesty and things like this. Like, you were getting revelation knowledge of what you actually needed to be as a human being in God's eyes.
That's right.
You know, and you were getting the wisdom as the prayer asked for. Like, give me the wisdom to understand. Yeah. That's what you were getting, understanding wisdom.
I think it was. And I think that was a coping skill, right? That was necessary for me to survive. Because one of the things I'm sure you know is that our addictions are a symptom. They are not.
Oh, of course. Yeah. That's the biggest truth bomb in this whole thing. Yeah, they are a symptom of something else.
It's like people say, oh, you need to stop drinking and doing drugs. Well, that helps. Yes. Yeah, you should not do that. Yes. In fact, if you don't stop doing those things, you'll never get better. But that's not the problem. One of my favorite sayings back then is, if you have a drunken idiot and you get rid of the drinking, what do you have? Right? That is so true. So true, right? Yeah. So you can be a dry drunk, they call them, I think. Yeah. Or
California
whatever.
Sober, where you just smoke weed.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I quit smoking cigarettes by smoking weed, you know? So I had all these tricks that none of them worked, but it didn't matter until I learned how to live life on life's terms, how to understand what morality, integrity, and honor and truth was. I was just fumbling through life and allowing my crowds that I was hanging out with to dictate who I was and what I did.
That's a big part of it, was my walk too. The influences around me helped me continue in my addiction, and then once I got saved, it was like I started doing things I didn't want to do because I'm feeling convicted for the first time. I realized I needed to change my friend group. It took a little while. Not because I didn't want them to get saved and come with me, but because they didn't want to have anything to do with the Jesus guy anymore. You know,
yeah, trust me, I know.
So you're in prison.
Well, let me tell you, it's not Jesus. Yeah. It's just doing right. So, I was not a Christian until I was in prison for like 1.5 years, which got to tell that part. This is because for me, it was life changing. But my friends didn't want to have anything to do with me after I just started acting right. You know what I mean? So that crowd dispersed. I was all by myself. I got a dog. His name was Vinny. And he was my only friend. Wow. And I had so many friends, you know, and I'm thinking, were they really my friends? There was a couple girls that hung around because they just kind of felt sorry for me, I guess. But I had no friends. And it had nothing to do with Christianity. It had to do with just acting right. You know what I mean? Because that crowd doesn't want to act right. Or they don't know how to. I don't know. They think it's no fun. Right?
I remember when I was... with my normal friend group, I felt like it was normal, and the world would say this is a normal friend group. None of them were addicted to anything. So, but there was a Christian guy in our outside circle who like hung out with us sometimes, and he would offer to pray for people and offer to do things that were just like normal, like, hey, I don't think we should drink, guys. Let's just go have fun or whatever. And we were just like, you're the loser. What
fun is that? Yeah, right. Well, I think people that use alcohol and drugs do it because it works, right? Like for me, it did help numb, whatever pain I didn't know I was going through. Yeah. I had it, but I didn't understand it, didn't want to deal with it because I didn't know how to deal with it. And I think that's, again, how the enemy keeps us down, when we're in situations like that. And I had no one breathing life into me at all. My friends were just as dumb as I was, you know? So anyway, now I'm in prison. I've been in there for 1.5 years, and there's this, again, I'm not a Christian. I believe there's a God, but it ain't the Christian God that I grew up with.
Because you walk the steps, and so for those who don't know, the steps talk about like an agnostic God, essentially. Like
you can any God you want. God.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anything that's more powerful than you or whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was God. I just didn't see it as a Christian God. So, I didn't really, I guess I was kind of on, okay, which God, right? Like there's so many gods out there. So I was on a bit of a quest. So I studied a bunch of different religions, Christianity last, because I was like, I already know that one ain't right. So, because here I am thinking I know everything.
Yeah, sure.
So I really got convinced by the Jehovah's Witnesses that they were right, and man, are they wrong, Mormons were silly. I really enjoyed Hinduism, and as soon as I found out they believed that the earth sat upon a sea turtle who was carried by elephants, and they still believe it today, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I can't believe this is not true. And here I am on an honesty quest, right? Truth is very important to me. So it was easy to see through all these other religions. And here's the key. They all have to deal with the book. They all have to deal with the man. You know what I mean? Every single religion has something to say about Jesus and the Bible. So I'm thinking, okay, I guess I need to look into this Jesus thing some, but I kept dismissing it because I thought, well, the Jehovah Witnesses say
they have Jesus.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, they're it, Yeah. And then when I started questioning them, they got mad at me.
They get mad when you ask questions. They come by my house a lot around here.
Well, one of the things that happened that really bothered me with the Jehovah Witnesses is I would ask them, what must you do to go to heaven? They believe you're going to inherit the earth, right? Yeah. Only 144,000 chosen ones get to heaven. Yeah. And so I said, okay, well, how do I make sure I inherit the earth? And they said, well, it's all based on accurate knowledge. So I'm like, well, when I study the history of Jehovah's Witnesses, one, you didn't allow black people in your church for many, many years. You've predicted the end of the world wrong like 20 times. Like, you guys are the most messed up one there is. Oh, that was not a good thing to say in the Kingdom Hall, right? So anyway, they ousted me, and now I'm thinking, that can't be true. Even though I was bought in, they were mean.
Yeah, and like the deacons of the church.
Yeah, right. Here we go again. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. So anyway,
are you talking to people in the jail about this? You're reading books? Like, how are you getting information?
I was in the library. I was in the chapel. So the chapel is non-denominational. It's every religion the Wicca has books in there. You know what I mean? So I had access to that. I could just read whatever I wanted. And so that's all I could do, and I would talk to people that were practicing those religions, and the Muslims were a gang. So I knew that Muslims were at least not acting like real Muslims because it was a gang in there. So if you're black and you go into the institution back then, you were gobbled up by the Muslim group right away, whether you were Christian or not. Now, I saw some strong Christian men be like, get that out of my face, and God protected them amongst other things. But so I've dismissed Christianity, and but I'm thinking, okay, something's up with this Jesus guy, but I don't feel like studying him right now. And so I just kind of was focused on my sobriety and helping other guys stay clean and sober. And so I was working in a therapeutic community. And my buddy comes up to me and says, hey, dude, there's this group that's coming in, and you got to tolerate what they're talking about for a week, but at the end of it, there's going to be a home-cooked meal. Uh-oh. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, all this stuff.
The good stuff.
So I'm like, sweet, bro. Like, how do we get to that? Well, only like 40 guys out of 1,800 can go, right? So you got to get up early, get in line, and sign up. Well, I had to work. So this is a miracle in itself, by the way. This is probably miracle number one, and we'll get into more. My buddy signs my name. He's not allowed to sign anyone else up but himself, but he snuck my name in. He must have done something like this, wrote his name, and then put my name and my number underneath it. And so he's like, bro, I got to sit. We're going. So I'm like, sweet. We both worked in the kitchen, so we know home cooked meal. I mean, what we eat in there. I worked in the kitchen on the loading dock, so I would see the boxes that come in. Someone would say not for human consumption on them, right? And we're cooking it up and feeding it to everybody. I mean, it's horrible. Wow. Except when the inspectors come. You always know when an inspector's coming because the food changes for a week, right? Oh. But anyway, that's here nor there. So we go to, it's called REC Weekend, Residents Encounter Christ. Okay, now I never heard what the acronym meant. I just heard it was REC Weekend. You're getting a home-cooked meal. And we're like, this is awesome, baby. So I walk in, and there's this table full of homemade cookies. I'm like, ooh, this is already getting good. We haven't even talked to anyone yet.
Chocolate chip, bro.
Yeah. So I get in there, and before I get to grab a cookie, this lady hugs me. I have not been embraced for a year and a half, right? Because you just don't do that stuff. On a visit, my mom would hug me or something like that, but I've not been embraced by another person in a year and a half. And this lady embraced me, and I was like, oh, that feels so good. I didn't even know I liked hugs. You know what I mean? Yeah. Now I love hugs, man. Right. But I just didn't know, but it just felt so great. And I was like, oh, okay, that was nice. I walked right past the cookies. I didn't even pick up a cookie. And I was slobbering. I think that I probably had a little drool because of those cookies. There's so many of them. Anyway, so we get back. They start talking about Christianity because this is a Residence Encounter of Christ. So I'm like,
food's the bait.
The food's the bait, baby. Yeah. And it worked for me. So anyway, there was this old lady there who had a black eye. And so I'm like, I wonder what happened to her. She probably fell down the steps or something like that. Well, anyway, she gets up, shares her testimony. She gets mugged the day before she shows up to this event.
What?
And I'm sitting here saying to myself, who is this lady that she would come in here and share this stuff with the guys that just beat her up and took her purse? And I mean, it was bad, you know? And I'm feeling so sorry for this lady, but I'm so in awe of the fact that she still came to talk to us, like help us.
Yeah.
You know, what does she want to help us for? So that was the beginning of this old lady impacting me. And so I kind of watched her throughout the week. And at the very last day, it was a foot washing. And so in prison, you know, you get 3 pairs of socks, 3 pairs of underwear. So you can imagine, you know, everybody's feet stink.
Yeah,
it's
know? Dirty. Yeah.
So I'm like, they're not washing my feet. You can wash all these other guys' feet, not washing mine. So I stood in the corner, and there was 3 stations, old lady with a black eye and 2 other ladies, or 2. One was a guy. And so all these inmates are going up, getting their feet washed. I'm watching the old lady like a hawk. And I don't know why I was watching her like a hawk, but I was. So anyway, everybody gets their feet washed but me. And I'm sitting there back in my buddy, he's got his feet washed. You know, he's off.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, no, I pass. I don't want you to wash my feet. And she just waves me over. And I could not tell this lady no. So I go over there and I sit down. This is where I'm going to lose it. So you'll have to like fill the gap.
Yeah, we'll put the screen.
All right. So I'm sitting there and I'm looking at her, and then she leans over to pick up the pitcher, and it's full to the brim. She's probably washed at least 8 to 10 guys' feet at this point, and no one filled up this pitcher. In fact, the water that they got this pitcher from was on the other side of the camp. So she looked at that pitcher. I looked at that pitcher. She looked at me because she just saw a miracle, and I just saw a miracle. And I was like, she couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. There was this moment of that we shared together right there. I was like, whew.
Holy moly.
This was better than the turtle. You know? And what do I do with this information? Yeah. You know, I've listened to all the Jesus stories for a week. I was compelled by this one guy that says, hey, if I'm wrong, you know, you lived a good life. If I'm right, you didn't go to hell. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking, oh, okay, maybe I'll listen to this Jesus thing a little more. But when I saw that miracle, or when I saw that pitcher full of it was so full, John, she could hardly pick it up. I mean, wasn't wine, but it was filled to the brim. And so much so it was just spilling, and she couldn't carry it. So I helped her.
I just got to stop for a second because this is such a beautiful story.
Thanks.
Romans 15:13 says that when you put your trust in God, your life overflows with joy, peace, and hope. And that's the picture I'm getting, that like God didn't have to, that lady didn't have to show you the gospel. She didn't have to point to Romans 15:13. She had to Romans Road, John 3. She didn't have. You saw
real life.
You saw a bucket of water, and that's how God showed himself revealed to you.
What's interesting to me is I don't know how long it had been since she's seen a miracle, but it'd been since I was 7 since I saw one, and I wasn't even sure that was a miracle. It could have been luck. There was a turtle over there. But when I saw, and I knew for a fact, she knew for a fact, and we had that moment together, and she reached down to pick up this water and was too weak to, you know, pick it up. And she'd done it 10 times. And it just hit me like, okay, how in the world did that happen? That is a miracle. I don't care. No one's going to convince me otherwise ever.
Yeah.
I don't know it was Jesus. I don't know it was God. I don't know what happened, but I just witnessed something that there was no explanation for other than it had to be a miracle. So now I've got all this pressure.
Yeah.
Now I just saw something that I have to, and I have to just make this decision. What I see was, was I delusional? I hadn't done drugs in years. So I'm
And
thinking,
you're a logical guy. You're on your road to truth, as you call it.
oh my gosh.
You know?
Yeah.
And so now you're having to reconcile, is this truth? Is this water? I imagine that's a lot to think about in a moment.
It really was. And then after I had our feet washed, we got in this circle and began to pray. And I began to weep like a 2-year-old. I fell to my knees.
Yeah.
Not a good place to weep and fall to your knees in front of other inmates. It's weakness, right? Didn't matter to me. I didn't give a rip. I knew that what I had just saw had to come from not human resources, but spiritual. And I had already exhausted all these other religions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, I studied them. I wanted them to be true. They came up so short.
Right.
Not just a little bit of it's not true. It's easy.
Right.
If you really take the time to, there's 3, right, that you might struggle with, the monotheistic ones, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. All the other ones are so hocus pocus. It's like so easy to see through. But now I have to deal with Jesus in the book like every other religion.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, now I got to read the book and not the Jehovah's Witness one because it's different.
Right. Yeah.
Right? A real book. And I got to figure out about this Jesus guy. So I'm on my knees and I'm weeping. I'm like, God, if you want my life, you can have it. I don't know what I just saw, but I know that was supernatural. And I'm not sure if this Jesus guy is real. I don't know anything. But you can have my life. Look what I did with it.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean?
I get that.
It was easy to give up. Like people think my testimony is great. I'm like, shoot, it was no brainer for me.
No brainer. I'm telling you.
Right.
Look, when you know where you used to be and where this new thing, even before it happened, I can remember the night I got saved. I didn't stop gambling that night, but I knew my life was about to change. I just knew it. I don't know how. No one could explain it to me. No one could say, "Well, in 10 years you're going to have kids and marry. You're never going to go term." I had no prediction of what the tomorrow looked like, but I knew in that moment that it was just get better. It was just better than what I'd lived before. And I didn't want what it was because every choice I made, every reason I did for something, trying to make money be my God and all this stuff, it amounted to nothing. It brought me to a place.
I think you've explained that perfectly.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
What good is all that crap? I know what I was saved from, Mr. Smith. I'm not going back to that. Like my wife grew up in a Christian home, kind of questions her faith sometimes. I'm like, you ain't never going to get that out of this guy.
Yeah.
My wife is amazing and I would say, I almost said almost always, she always makes the right decision. I'm in awe by her gift to do this because I always make poor decisions, even still. That's why God gave me her.
Same way my wife raised in the church hadn't seen an R-rated movie until she met me. And then I was like,
yeah. Well, I don't know if my wife has either. I'm not sure. But so anyway, this miracle happens.
Yeah.
I'm falling on my face. I'm weeping. I'm like, God, you can have my life if you want it. And I get up from the prayer circle, and I was a totally different person at that very moment. Like I must have surrendered and didn't know it.
yeah.
But when I said, you can have my life if you want it, that was enough for him. He's just waiting for a crack in the door to kick it open and change your life. Someone listening to this that doesn't know him, that's how he is. That's what he wants. That he wants you to just give him a little.
Yeah.
I have this debate going on with a really good friend of mine. Her name's Katie. And she is telling me there's no such thing as free will. And man, she's good at her argument because free will is difficult to prove. But I believe love, by definition, must be freely given. And the reason that God doesn't push himself on us, right, is because he's a gentleman, for one. And two, if you want to experience love for real, it has to be a choice that somebody makes, right? So people who say, oh, God chose you, you didn't choose him. Maybe. I don't know. But I can tell you this, I choose him.
Every day.
Every day I choose him because the worst day I have now is so beautiful.
I say that all the time,
beautiful.
Jason.
Yeah.
I said, look, the worst day I have since Christ is better than the best day back then.
Yeah.
Winning jackpots and all, it compares not
None
to this life.
I mean, useless,
Yes.
And so fast forward, somebody says, hey, you want to get baptized? I felt like my hand went up as quick as it did when I saw those laser dots on me.
Yeah.
And I don't know what baptism means or anything yet. but my spirit welled up in me, and I'm like, yes, I want to get baptized. Now, I got baptized when I was 12, but I just got wet. I had no idea. My mom was like, you should get baptized. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So I went to church where I hated the deacons. And they hated me, and
I got baptized at 12 at the church. Dude, like, a lot of similarities here. Okay, good to know.
Maybe us addicts. No, so anyway, I get baptized, and now I am reading this book. No, I take it back. I did not read the book, but I believe in Jesus now.
Yeah.
In a way that here's what I said to myself: this is easy. This guy dies on a cross as payment for our sins, and we don't have to go to hell if we'll just accept this. This is easy peasy. So I would think I can, because I think I'm awesome, right? I can explain this in a way where everyone's going to accept Jesus.
Right.
So I'm running around prison telling everybody about Jesus like a madman. I get punched in the face. I'm thrown out of buildings, because I was witnessing to the guards. And I didn't care who it was. I'm like, I have to tell you what I've just discovered, and I've been studying for a year and a half now, world religions, to tell you this is the only one with any true power.
Yeah.
Like, not just this one's truest, this one has power.
Yeah.
Miracles happen, and he wants you to see them if you'll believe these things, right? Even before I believed, he showed me miracles. Now that I believe, I mean, almost everything that happens to me is an absolute miracle. My life, I have a great life. I wrote a book. I could hardly read when I went to prison. You know what I mean? And like, what in the world? I own 3 companies.
Yeah.
I have a wonderful life, and my entire life was in a 4x8 cell 30 years ago.
How long did you spend time in prison?
So I was in for 5 years. I thought I went up for parole in 3, but because my crimes were so severe, they're like, no, you're not getting out in 3. So I ended up having to do 5.
Wow.
So I did 5 in and 5 out on parole.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went in 1995, May of 95, and I got out May of 2000. So my daughter, I was out for her 6th birthday. But my mother, who was a saint, brought her up every other weekend to visit me, and man, that was so important to me.
Was it the time easier once you got born again? Was it easier in prison or harder?
Piece of cake, because I knew I was freer than those people on the outside, so it meant nothing to me. It was just now the last 6 months you're anticipating getting out, so that felt like a year, or maybe 2, because it feels like time's going in reverse. But when I became a Christian, I didn't give a rip that I was in prison anymore. It didn't matter to me. Nothing mattered, because I knew I could die today and I would be with him forever. That's so good. And so, it got so easy, man. Not just easier. It got a breeze. It became a breeze.
Yeah. So you talked about being entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that, God puts the gifts inside of us, right? Whether we know what they're for or not. He put this entrepreneurial gift inside of you, and you used it in a way that was destructive to your life, or seemingly, because it brought you to the cross. So who's to say if it was in the end,
point.
What it was. But certainly if Jesus didn't show up, if you're still in prison, or if he had to serve the 50 years.
Dead.
Yeah, or dead, or whatever it looks like.
Yeah.
But yet, you get this redeemed life, and now those same gifts that were there before that helped you grow that business now help you grow your own other business.
That's right.
Where you're able to serve people with your gifts and callings. They're irrevocable. The Bible says your gifts and callings are irrevocable, and that's what you got to walk in right now.
Yeah.
Outside of your actual business, though, I'm curious, since you've been out of prison, what areas of your life has you really seen a change?
Well, let me say, right when I got out, I was a bit shell-shocked, right? Like, I hadn't been free for a long time. There were things that I believed that were not true. Like, everyone knew I just got out. Don't forget, it's very difficult to be embraced or cared for or anything in there. You're on your own. So when I get out, people want to talk to me. People are like, hey, Jason's back, and all my, I was gone for 5 years, and most of my friend base hadn't changed a bit. You know what I mean?
Certainly.
And I'm a completely different person. In fact, I know that old man's dead. That's hard to explain.
That's what the gospel does. You become a new creation.
A new creation, man. Yeah. No doubt about it. That's hard to understand, but until it happens to you.
Until it happens.
Yeah. And I'll tell you a short story about this. So my brother, there were some family issues going on in our family with the family business. And so I took my brother out to lunch. I'm like, bro, what's going on? He's like, Jason, we're just all waiting for the old Jason to come back. I'm like, bro, it's been 7 years. Like, that guy's dead. He ain't coming back. He didn't understand what that meant because he's not a Christian. But it's amazing to me that you can live a really good life. Like, the Lord has given me a desire to be obedient in my life, and because of it, he blesses me. And even though everyone you know loves you and cares about you that knew you before sees that, it don't matter.
Yeah.
They think that old Jason's coming back, that old John's coming back, and it's I don't care, but it's sorry for them.
It's really hard for people to see that. I was working at the casino after I got born again, and like you, I was telling everybody about Jesus in the break rooms.
You're brave, working at a casino and you had a gambling issue.
I made a lot of money, and it was like, until God finally called me out of it, what else was I going to do? It's not like I had a lot of options at the time, but nonetheless, I was being an evangelist without knowing I was being an evangelist. Like, I had this incredible transformation in my heart. I'm telling everybody in the break room and all this stuff, and they're cursing me out in the break room like you're getting punched in the face. No one sits with me at the break room at some point. They used to sit with me, now they don't. But at one point, one of my supervisors was like, "You smile a lot now," and I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You never smile. I've worked with you 10 years. I've never seen you smile before." He goes, "I'm gonna start calling you the new John Simmons." And they categorize me as being a new creation.
Is that why you called yourself the new John Simmons when you?
Yes.
Wow.
100%, because his name was Justin.
I love that.
And I had read the Bible at this point. I didn't know 2 Corinthians 5:17 that I'd become a new creation in Christ, but I knew, and it was evident to people around me, even if they didn't know the Bible, that something happened to John. We can't really point. He's saying it's this Jesus guy. We don't really want to have anything to do with that, but we know something has changed in him. And no matter how many times or how long I've been saved and how many miracles I can point to in my own life, that core group of people, you can't explain it to somebody. You just got to experience it.
You have to experience it. And I pray that they all do.
Me too. All the time. I pray for my friends.
Yeah, so I get out of prison, and here's a funny thing about God's sense of humor. He takes a convicted kidnapper and turns me into a youth pastor.
Oh, okay, all right.
So I thought that was funny. But so I get out of prison. I'm like, I want to get back in, because I was seeing guys come to know Jesus left and right in prison because they're all broken. And I get out here, and like nobody wants to hear it. Everybody's busy. Yeah, so the life is, people don't understand this who haven't been in prison, but you are too busy. And you're going to miss God. If you don't take the time to seek, the Bible says if you seek him, you'll find him.
Yeah.
Get your butt up and start seeking.
Yeah.
You better make time for it, because your eternity depends on it.
Yeah.
So I hate to get too crazy like that. But so I get out of prison, and I want to get back into prison and start sharing the gospel with these guys, giving them hope and stuff like that. And I kept getting turned down. The wardens were like, "No, we're not letting that guy back in." And so I'm frustrated. I'm meeting with this guy, just met. His name's Jeff Day. And I'm telling him, "Dude, I'm just so discouraged. I'm trying to get back into the institutions and share hope with these guys. God's doing all these great things in my life, and they need to know these are possible, because in there's no hope." And he's like, "Well, Jason, what makes you think God doesn't want you to work with kids before they make the decisions that you did so they don't go to prison?" And I had never thought of that.
Yeah.
But this is God speaking to me. You know how it works now.
Yeah.
I didn't know at the time. So I'm like, okay. And I've been studying the Bible now for almost 3 years every single day. Like, I know the word. You know what I mean? I know who he is. And that's another thing. You can't please God if you don't know what pleases him. Read the Bible, please.
Meditate on the word day and night, it says. Let's let these guys who didn't read a whole lot, who've read a book that is really important.
Yeah, take it from me. You need to read it, or you'll get punched in the face. So I get out, and I start volunteering in the youth ministry. And then the 2 volunteers that were doing it, they were just kind of doing it because someone needed to do it. There's only like 4 or 5 kids in the youth group. So I was like, okay, and I'm breathing life into these guys and so forth. Well, they're like, "Dude, this kid, he's something." Like, I'm 26 at the time, right? And so we're going to turn this ministry over to him. I'm like, "Do you know what you're doing? Don't be turning the ministry over to me. I don't have no clue what I'm doing. I just love Jesus with a passion."
Right.
And so he's like, "That's all it takes." So I was like, shoot, I qualify.
Yeah.
But I think it's funny that God turned a convicted kidnapper into a youth pastor. I think that's just hilarious how he can do something like that.
God sees inside the heart. Yeah. God sees his purpose. It says, Ephesians 2:10, our plan, his plans for our life were prepared before we were born. That's why we have the gifts we do. That's why we have the path we got. We unqualify ourselves. You know what I'm saying? He saw that you are qualified, to do youth leadership and anything that you are doing successfully for the kingdom of God.
The world would say, I not only am I not qualified, I should be excluded because of my past to be working with kids. Now, someone finds out I went to prison for kidnapping, they don't know I didn't kidnap a little kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're
Probably their first thought, to be honest.
it is their first thought. It's my first thought.
Yeah.
I don't blame them.
Who kidnaps an adult?
Right. Yeah. Very rare, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's not that rare. I don't know. So I'm doing this youth pastor thing, and we take this ministry from 4 to 6 kids to like 180.
Holy moly.
And I mean, God's just doing amazing things, right? And so it's a small church. This is the one I grew up in with the deacons that were mean to me, right?
Okay.
And so, anyway, all this stuff's going on. We start seeing these kids come to know Jesus. They're bringing their friends from school, and just wonderful, wonderful time.
Yeah.
So I forgot why I was saying all that, but ultimately my wife and I pastored for 9 years, and the ministry got way beyond our ability to do it and work full-time jobs and, be volunteers. So we finally said, hey, pastor, we got to get some people to replace them. Found this young couple of dynamic, and they came in and replaced us, and we worked with them for a year and a half. And then we just went out and planted churches after that.
Wow.
So actually we took a year off because we were pretty exhausted. But after that, we just started planting churches. And this is, Tim Needham was one of our interns, so he helped us with that ministry. He helped me develop an event called Friday Night Life. And we'd have live bands come in.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned later in life, the first kid that was in our youth group, his name's Brandon Hunter. He's now the senior pastor at that church.
All right, Brandon.
Yeah. And so Brandon tells people he's a Christian because of me. And because I did donuts in the parking lot, and I made Christianity fun.
Spoke a language they were listening to.
Yeah, and I'm saying, why can't I do donuts in the parking lot? And one of those deacons came up to me after I did the donuts and said, "We just paid to have this parking lot sealed."
Right. Carpet and the toilet paper always a big concern for the deacons.
Yeah, right. And so they saw me handle him, right? And they're like, "Man, Jason's cool, man. Christianity's cool."
Yeah.
And so this was the beginning of this ministry exploding. And I'm saying Christianity is the coolest.
The coolest. Yeah.
Like, what do the girls say? Like, modest is the hottest or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what the guys say, but Christianity is way cool.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing more cool than knowing the creator of the world wants to be your friend.
Yeah.
Name something more cool.
It's impossible.
It's
I haven't
impossible.
found it.
I mean, either. And you won't, because of what we know, you won't,
Yes.
right? So when I see Christians hurting the kingdom by being judgmental or excluding people like gay people or whatever, they can't be in here. Oh, no? Yeah, bring them in. Please bring those guys in. Yeah. Let's talk to them. Let's see what they have, and so anyway, this is all going on. I got to get back to my dad, if that's okay.
Yeah, please do.
Are we going over? Probably.
No, you're totally fine. We go hours sometimes. So
okay, well, I have to be somewhere at noon.
It's all good.
All right. Yeah. So, my dad, seeing these changes in my life, and him and I are having little talks here and there, and we get into a shouting match. And I don't know what we were even talking about, but I said to my dad, "You don't want to surrender your life to Jesus because you're afraid of giving something up. That's your problem." And he's like, "Jason, I'm ready. I'm ready." And I didn't know what to say. God shut me up, dude. I had no words because I couldn't believe my dad would say anything like that ever. And so I literally did not say another word and left because I don't know if I was scared. I don't know what happened. Yeah. In fact, I learned later it's because he wasn't probably going to hear any. I was yelling. That's not how you share the gospel. Yeah. However, very next week, my dad meets with our senior pastor and surrenders his life to Christ.
That's amazing. I bet you that felt great.
Oh, dude. And my mom, who'd been praying for him for all these years, my mom been praying for me too, which mother's prayer. I'm sure you can talk about that. So if there are any mamas out there,
my mom was the only person praying for me when I was in the midst of it.
Good thing it's the best person, the best one, and they're the ones that persevere, right? The church wouldn't exist today without women.
That's right.
Like we're so dumb we ran it into the ground, right?
Yeah.
So thank God for women.
The first time God said not good, he was looking at a man. He said not good.
He said this guy he needs some help. Yeah. So anyway, that's so my dad says I'm ready. And the Lord shut me up. It had to be a spiritual thing because, as you've learned so far, I don't shut up easy, especially when I'm talking about Jesus, right? And that was an open door. Yeah. When I see an open door, dude, I'm coming in like a football team, And so I've never been silenced like that before, but I knew it was the right thing. And I just got in my car and left. And I felt like, oh, I left my dad there who was crying out. And then it was on purpose. I didn't know it at the time, but it had to be on purpose because I probably would have ruined it or something. I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, my dad comes to know Christ, starts reading his Bible, stops drinking. Things are going fantastic in his life.
Wow.
And so, so my dad and I, prior to this though, by the way, my dad fell in love with me because he put me on the sales floor. My dad was a sales guy, right? I sold more homes than all the other salespeople put together. And he said things like, Jason, you're proving everything I've been telling these lazy salespeople for years, right? And
proud of my boy.
I'm proud of my boy. Now, of course, the other salespeople thought he was feeding me deals, which he wasn't. Yeah. The Lord was, but he wasn't. And so my dad was, and now we have something in common that we can, build a relationship on, if you will. So, like I said, my dad, the last 20 years of my relationship with my dad, dude, I cherish it. I mean, I can't wait to see him in glory, right? But that was the best 20 years of my life because I hated that man for no good reason because he did bad things. But he tried his best. Yeah. And my sister would tell me things like, can't you see what dad did for you? He gave up everything to get you out of jail. And I would be like, I would take that stuff for granted. Yeah. So anyway, my dad turned out to be an absolute wonderful man who loved well, sacrificed like you wouldn't believe for his family, and taught me everything I know. Yeah. You know what I mean? As far as business goes.
I think.
So happy ending.
Yes, it's super happy ending. In fact, as you're telling the story, I'm thinking when we first started talking, you said like his dad's dad and his dad's dad, like generationally, when Jesus showed up in your life, like all those bondages and all those breakdowns, generational chains that are on your family line,
gone, baby.
They're gone.
Yeah.
And so your children, your 30-year-old daughter and the other children, gone. They are like, I imagine you probably, because you said like your wife grew up different than you did. Yeah. And so God gave you a special wife here, to be married to a guy who was in prison and dealt with these other things. Like when I talk to my own wife, it's like, I don't know who that guy is. You talk about him a lot, but I wasn't there for any of it. I've only experienced this guy. And so
my wife would have never spoken to me.
Right.
Never even given me the time of day if she'd have known me back then.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. So when we talk about the generational thing being gone, like other people notice it more than maybe we do. Like it's gone. Yeah. And I think it's so beautiful because when I look at my kids, I'm like, I'm so thankful they're not going to have to go through that. They're not going to have to deal with, their salvation, they're going to have faith for that. I pray they get saved, and I pray. But my mom got baptized after I did. Like she gave her life after to the Lord, seeing the transformative life of mine. So hear you say that your father did the same thing, and your mom's been praying for it, and that when that stuff gets lifted, it's so cool. I feel
like my dad was at the water pitcher moment, right? Like I see this in my son's life. Now what do I do? Yeah, I know it to be true. I'm looking at it. I must believe this. Is this true, what I've been told my whole life, that this God can change somebody, even him? Yeah. Like the lowest of the low, what he did to my son. Is it possible he would still want to do that for me? Yeah. And somehow it worked out. You know what I mean? Yeah. So my brother and sister, I have a twin brother, older sister, and my brother's not saved. My sister just recently got saved. Wow, and her and I had a very difficult relationship. And now she's like when my sister calls me, I see her phone number show up on my caller ID. I'm in meetings a lot, so sometimes I can't answer, but I can't wait to talk to her. Yeah. Because she is living a life of a Christian at every turn. She's asking all the right questions. She's not allowing crap to get in her way of truth. Yeah. And so anyway, the impact that miracle, that picture had on my life, and there's been many miracles after that, but I would have never considered, and he knew it, because I would already dismiss Christianity at this point. You know what I mean? I knew that wasn't true. Now maybe he would have found me some other way. I don't know. But that moment changed everything. Old lady with a black eye and a weak arm.
That's an incredible story, Jason, really. And the fruit that's come out of it, I think that really when we get saved and we realize that our life is meant for something better, that's what really set me on a path that like, this Jesus died for me and all he wants me to do is live for him. well, shoot, whatever you need me to do, I'll go do it. He's like, start a ministry, go teach people. It's like, oh, sure. Like, is that a career I would have picked for myself? No.
Yeah.
But I'm so happy. I'm so fulfilled in it. And I feel like there's a lot of that in your walk as well. That like when I was like 1,000 people, you're like, actually, it's 2,000. Like there is pride, not in who you are and what you've done because you've done it. You're boasting in what Jesus has done for you, really, is what you're doing. And that your life is just serving other people.
I actually just had a moment that kind of falls in line with that. So what we do is we, help people become homeowners that no one else can help. That's what we do. That's what I love, right? And I was a recipient of that, right? So I was self-employed, writing off my income, couldn't qualify for a bank loan. So that's how I found out about this.
Oh.
So I bought a house on owner financing. I was like, I didn't know you could do that. But I was working with banks and short sales and, loan modifications and stuff. So I kind of put all this together and built this program. And so, I deal with almost all the problems, right? If there's somebody that hasn't been making their payments on time, or there's an issue with the house they can't afford to fix, or whatever, I'm constantly dealing with the negative part of our business. And I remember just yesterday, 2 days ago, I was sitting here saying, wow, is this program really helping people or hurting people? And so we have 260 of them right now that are active. 18 of them have problems. And I forgot all about the other 200 and whatever that is, 30 something. Yeah. So, and then I talked to this lady, and she said, this was after I was feeling a bit frustrated. Like, am I really making a difference? And then I talked to this lady, and she says, Jason, this is my home. I've invested so much money in this house. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. And I was like, well, I really needed to hear that day. Yeah. And God, little things like that, God knows. I was at a point where I'm like, this program that we've built that have helped so many people, I started feeling negative about it, and God's like, no, you're doing exactly what I told you to do. And let me just make sure you know it.
Yeah. You're doing a great job.
Sweet old lady,
The idea that Jesus left the 99 to pursue the one, when I was at the casino, there was this guy, and he had won maybe like $5,000 or $6,000. And at the casino, you bring like stacks of chips to like the cashier or whatever. And they're this tall, maybe, if you have a lot of it. And so he puts it on there, and he sort of stumbles and fumbles.
I lost my entire paycheck one time gambling. Never gambled again.
Hey, if I would have only learned that lesson, I would have been better off.
Anyway,
yeah, the guy.
So I don't know anything about chips or casinos.
I'll tell you. So there's circle chips in there, and they get on here. He fumbles it, and one of them drops off, and it sort of catches the ground and it rolls off, and so it goes underneath this table where these 10 guys are sitting, right? And I'm saved at this point, and I'm just standing there. Like, I'm usually dealing. I'm at a table. I'm just happen to be standing here watching this whole thing. And he turns around from where his $5,000 are, and he turns around and he starts asking the guys at the table, hey, can you move this way? They're all sitting in chairs. Hey, I need to get underneath there. My left, it was $1. Basically, it was a dollar chip. Yeah. And he's on his hands and knees looking for this dollar. Meanwhile, he's got 5,000 sitting over here, not paying no attention to it. Anybody could come and just grab a handful of it if they wanted to. Now, we got cameras and shit. But it's like the idea that this guy left all of that to go chase after a $1 bill, to me, was wild. Like, and it's a perfect picture of how God shows us, like, he'll go after the one that's lost, like you and me are lost. But there's still others, yes. But
what an interesting correlation, John.
Yeah. So I really believe that, our lives are meant to do something incredible once we get connected with what God's purpose is.
Anything outside of that, so it'll be a waste of your time.
Exactly right. Yeah. And so I sense that you're walking fully in it. I'm so thankful for it. I'm so thankful to hear a story like yours, because I imagine that the joy you have on a daily basis, there's not a lot of people who get to know what it's like to really live a hard life before Jesus shows up and then live a transformed life afterwards.
Yeah. You know how you made a comment about someone who says, why are you smiling all the time, or something like that? Same thing happens to me.
Yeah.
The first time it happened to me, I'll never forget. I was in prison in commissary line, which is where you get your shampoo and stuff. And the guy working behind the thing's big old burly dude. He's like, what are you so happy about? Why are you smiling all the time? I'm like, bro, Jesus changed me. Yes. I am a new man. He's like, good answer.
Yeah. You only knew.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, man. Well, Jason, I think that's a great place to wrap it up.
Okay.
I appreciate you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, man, it was a lot of fun. I'm sorry I cried, but
Hey, no, I think
what it
that's
is.
beautiful. And in fact, anybody who wants to cry when Jesus is showing up is a good friend of mine. Like let's cry more. Jesus.
Well, I love that you're the new John Simmons.
Yes.
I thought that was cool. I thought, what is he talking about over there? New John
Yes,
Simmons.
and people don't look. I'm new creation. That old John's going. I'm 10 years old. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's good. So thanks for coming on today. I'm going to put a link to Jason's book in the bio of this video. And until next time, guys, we pray you discover a future and a hope for your life today.
We ain't trying to blend in. If you're ready, come on with us, my friends. Come on. We can change the world. Hey, we can change the world. Let's go.
What changes the world? The only thing that ever really changes the world is when somebody gets the idea that love can abound and can be shared.